Welcome to the Film Realist, the film and TV podcast from a complete nobody that's hopefully for somebody. Coming back after another 1 week break because January/February has been slow, but there's been a lot of news and the Super Bowl just happened, so there's a lot of trailers. And because I think I teased this last time with a Flash trailer suspected to be coming with the Super Bowl, he held up his end. Stephen Colbert is back joining me, Kyle Naranya. Stephen, welcome back.
Hi, thanks. My 30% their voice.
It's fine. You're better off than me just doing it because I've tried doing trailers by myself and it's not the same. So thank you for joining me. We're going to be talking about three main trailers. One that I have a lot to say about, one that is not a trailer, it's a TV spot, and one that I don't know how to feel about it. I know Jermaine, you're listening to this, says that DC has some big guns coming, pun maybe intended now that I've said it. But there's a lot in the Flash. Is it listed as the theatrical trailer? It might as well be, because I think it lays out the narrative.
I don't know how they'd even differentiate any of that anymore. I used to be really particular about the differences, and now it just seems like everything is just kind of the same.
Let's see, what does Warner Brothers say? So Warner Brothers and DC have listed it as official trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Great. All right, so that got us nowhere. So the three trailers that are going to be discussed are Fast X, which was a short film, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which was a 30-second TV spot, and obviously The Flash. Time codes for each of those will be in the description if I get to it. If I don't, just enjoy some rampant speculation and all sorts of random shenanigans that Steven and I get up to, because there will be rants and segues to nothing, because that's typically how it works. This is likely to be a longer episode, so enjoy. I can say next week I will be back with Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Tickets for that are already purchased, and I can actually say I already have my tickets for Fast X. So that's locked in.
I woke up to a notification from Fandango on that, and I was like, tickets are available. When does this even come out? Like, I had to look at the calendar. I was like, I don't know the last time I've seen tickets go up that far out.
I think the last big time, that's a terrible sentence. The most notable time for me was the No Way Home tickets. That was a pretty notable, for at least up here in Canada, that crashed Cineplex, our major theatrical chain's website, which was super annoying. What's more ironic about the whole situation is that you can't get tickets for Creed 3, you can't get tickets for Shazam, and you can't get tickets for Super Mario Bros. Yet, or The Flash. Like I believe it's mid-May. So there's like some things that are coming up relatively soon. Can't get tickets for them yet. But Shazam may have its own PR difficulties. Anyways, moving into Fast X. Now, before we get into the specifics with this trailer, what is your relationship with the Fast and the Furious franchise?
I liked I was a big fan of most of the early ones, and then I kind of fell off the franchise a little bit. Tokyo Drift took me out of it quite a bit, but then a few years later I went back and I caught up on a bunch of them, and was like, oh wow, that was like, that's, Fast. Well, the fourth one was just called Fast, or The Fast. No, Fast and Furious was the fourth, right?
Yes, they took out the thes
right.
for number 4.
And I was always a huge Too Fast, Too Furious fan. Like, just it's like it really embraced the camp in a great way. But then also
it's a cartoon.
Yeah, and like Fast 5 and Fast and Furious 6 were all great. Furious 7 I thought really stuck the landing in a way that I didn't know if they'd be able to. But there was a sense of self-awareness to all of them that I think, starting with Fast 8, at least Vin Diesel and maybe a few other people don't know what franchise they're in anymore. And I think that really summarizes effectively my thoughts on this trailer as well, where it's like there's a lot of cool stuff in it, but I'm not sure they are all in the same acting in the same movie. Like Momoa knows exactly what movie he's in. I think Vin Diesel, especially with his recent like comparing it to writing Lord of the Rings comments, I think he thinks that this is something different.
I think that's certainly fair. I have a funny relationship with the Fast and Furious films. I never saw the first. I never. I had only seen the second one on TBS, what I believe is now called Peachtree. It was a frequent film on that channel, and then didn't really get into them until 4. Like backtracked, watched 1 through 4. I did not like Tokyo Drift. It's grown on me with time because of Han.
Yeah.
Retroactively being like, this is a sick character. It's too bad he's dead. And
well, and a lot of those early, like especially Tokyo Drift is a good example of like the franchise later on really got to hugging the camp and the serious street racing vibe. Tokyo Drift was the first one that like really kind of went off course in this new genre, whatever it is that it's doing, where like if you watch it totally unseriously, it's a riot, but they didn't tell us yet that we weren't supposed to take it seriously.
Mm-hmm. That's been ultimately, I think, the sticking point for me is the self-awareness to some degree, but also, and I don't mean to say this facetiously, but like the heart and the family aspect to some degree was done well. Like you're grading these movies in their own box. Like I did a tier list, and I'll probably redo my own when 10 comes out, of where because you're ranking them against themselves. I was contemplating doing a DCEU one before The Flash, but it doesn't really make sense until those films come out, adjacent or otherwise. But I think the series was at its best when it was Paul Walker and Vin Diesel. The chemistry between the two of them quite literally kept the whole thing together. And 5 is the best the franchise ever had. It was a great villain / antagonist with The Rock, who then ultimately becomes like not a member of the family, but like a literally butting heads with Vin Diesel character, like something the franchise didn't have 4 films in. They retroactively made Braga more involved and stuff, and like the arcs that they were kind of building to 7 really worked retroactively, which is ironic because of what we get in Fast X. But I think, and I've been thinking about this a lot because I was talking to somebody about the trailer today. I think without Brian and Paul Walker in these films, it has really affected the whole machine.
Mm-hmm.
Not in a bad way, because clearly these films financially are doing well, but they are more and more cartoons, which can be wildly entertaining.
It's almost like The Office without Jim.
Yeah, it is. It's so strange, and it's unfortunate that what seems to be more abundantly clear, specifically with 8 and 9, is they don't even... Actually, the perfect comparison would be like Transformers 4 and 5, where you are continuing to add to the canon, but retroactively you're changing it, but it doesn't seem like you'd seen the previous movies beforehand. Brian Toretto in 8, we're spoiling all of them before we can get into 10, at best should have been like 2 or 3 years old by the time we meet him. And if not, he's the largest infant I've ever seen.
Which is every movie infant also.
Also true, but
that's especially him.
Yeah, especially him. And then with the relationship that Vin Diesel has developed with The Rock, you lose that aspect of it, which then you got Hobbs and Shaw, which I think is better than 9 and 10. Or not, I haven't seen 10, 9 and 8. And then we get to 10, which is another retcon, which I actually don't have a problem with. Like, throwing a character who you didn't really see in the background is kind of something has been done throughout a lot of sequels. One of my favorites is when they did Back to the Future 2 and they were revisiting the events of the first film in a fun way. So having Jason Momoa, no, you're right, know exactly what he's supposed to be doing. He
understands the assignment.
It's like Vin Diesel is Elizabeth Berkley in Showgirls, and Jason Momoa is Kyle MacLachlan, where like he knows what movie they're making, and unfortunately Elizabeth did not. Uh, um, that's not for children. Children listening, do not go watch that film. So it's unfortunate that that's the case because the earnestness of the franchise has always been something I've enjoyed. And I watched the trailer on my own and then watched it with my wife, and she says, "What's happening?" And I said, "I don't know." Outside of Jason Momoa now being Reyes' son, which I think is a decent enough thread, like for the 10th film of the franchise to be pulling at the 5th, but it became abundantly clear to me that they don't know what to do with Brian, specifically because I read an interview with Louis Leterrier today, who said there are going to be flashbacks to 5. So Brian and Paul Walker was alive for 5. So what I find most interesting is this may actually be confirmation that they've shot new stuff with Paul Walker's brothers to use in 5, or the footage for 5.
I don't know how I feel because on one hand, it's way better, and way less like, I don't know, offensive isn't the right word, but I'm way less bothered by the idea of that than I would be about them just bringing him in as a full blown character in the new stuff. But also, I don't know, it's a can of worms.
It's icky. I heard the descriptions on another podcast where they talked about bringing somebody back from the dead, where it is impossible to describe accurately in the off-putting nature of it. The only time that has been successful to some degree was 7 was a movie in production, and Rise of Skywalker, I guess because it was all actual footage of Carrie Fisher. You're not bringing somebody back from the dead. I think if you asked the Fast and Furious fandom, it's too many F's in a sentence, the only really acceptable factor would have been, and I think we all know where it's going, it's going to be the longest table imaginable at a barbecue, and Brian's sitting there for it.
Yeah.
Right? Like that was the only instance, and the only issue that I have with it, and I wouldn't even describe it as an issue, hesitancy behind it is I don't like it, but where I struggle with declining or like disapproving of it happening is fundamentally it comes down to what do the Walkers think? What does, I want to say it's Melanie. I believe it's Melanie, Paul's daughter. If they're given the green light, then like, I guess like fundamentally, then I mean, legally they have the permission to do it, but it's never that level of recreation has never been done well. Tarkin in Rogue One would have been so much better if it was just back of the head. He never turns around to talk to, oh no. Oh, my brain.
Krennic.
What's that guy? Yeah, thank you. Bad guy from everything from 2016 to 2019. But so I don't know. I think it's fine that they're just making them bigger and stupid. It's clear that Vin's brought in John Cena to be the new big wrestler guy in it. Like it's comical to me though that everybody is in this. Obviously The Rock goes without saying. It's weird, but Luke Evans. Where is Luke Evans? He was the reason 7 happened. Which is one of the, I'd say 5, 6, and 7 are the best in the franchise. 6 was fantastic given the fact that it came off of 5 and was compelling. It was the evil twins storyline against all of the family. So, and the fact that we know he's better because he showed up in 8 to help save the baby, but then he's nowhere for the green screen New York barbecue. Or where's Vanessa Kirby? She was in Hobbs and Shaw.
I have such a hard time keeping track of any of it. It's like it's enjoyable, but once we start talking about characters and stuff, my brain is like, no.
Ask away. I'll answer your questions. What's the first question that came to your head? I got this.
I think part of it's my brain. My brain naturally detaches when I'm like, oh, this is like, it's like when you're watching like suspension of disbelief when you're watching like sci-fi. You're not like, that's not how space works. And so like I watched this and I'm like, that's not how characters work. I'm like, oh, you're just go with it. And
They're
so
just action heroes. They're
and
just action figures.
so it's I don't even have questions because my brain is just like, oh yeah, no, don't take all of this part seriously. You're just watching flipping cars. I'm like, okay, cool, awesome, let's go.
I just thought, well, what if these all end and it's Vin Diesel sitting in a boardroom with like three cars and three like, oh, what were they called? Rescue heroes, where they were like all upper body. And he's like, and then he's like, no, Dom, ah! And then it pulls out and they're like, I don't know if that's going to work. Like if the whole thing's a joke, that'd be amazing.
I'm not convinced Vin Diesel is. I mean, it would be it would be like Joaquin Phoenix and what is it called? I was never here, or I'm still here, or whatever that Casey Affleck documentary was. That it would be that level of like meta acting if Vin Diesel has really been in on the joke this whole time.
And then he wins an Oscar for like the greatest performance in history of film because we all were wrong.
Speaking of which, I can't not watch anything Fast and Furious related where he shows up on the screen without looking at who he's standing next to or across from. And
and then Googling their height.
Yeah, exactly. And somebody pointed out, they said find a single shot where he shares the screen with anyone other than Michelle Rodriguez. And I was like, oh wow, that's hilarious. And then I looked at the shot where he faces off against Momoa, and literally they have him positioned so he's facing him, and then there's a guy standing in front of him, but like closer to the camera, so that from the knees down you can't see.
This is
Dom.
in the like Brazil sequence, right? That's calling back to 5.
Yeah, if you want to find it quick, look at I tweeted it out a few days ago, like after the trailer. But yeah, you literally see him.
Okay.
For the audio, for everybody. You see,
I will share this.
You see Jason
photo.
Momoa head to toe, arms out. You know the taunting they do in Fast and the Furious, and then Dom is standing across from him, but there is somebody positioned so that you can't see, like his thigh down.
Oh my, that's hilarious.
And then the second you see what they're doing, and you can cheat the perspective, you can see the apple box, right? You can see like that they're. Like it's very
that's
clearly because
amazing.
Momoa is like a solid foot taller than him.
Yeah, that's so funny. What is his recorded height? He's got to be 6'2", 6'3".
Something like that. Well, and Vin Diesel's height is over-reported also.
He's 6'4".
Yeah.
That's
and
amazing.
You can really tell because
so much.
Whenever you check, I always watch Vin Diesel's Instagram videos are the best because he always surprises somebody who's sitting down, and he drops in from above them and like gets his arm over their shoulder. I mean, if you look up the height cheating tricks for like people who have like Napoleon, like Mark Zuckerberg, for example, there's a whole article published about look at how he stands in these pictures. Vin Diesel does all of those. And so, but you look at his Instagram, and it's all him like dropping down on top of someone who's sitting and putting them in like a chokehold or something to do the Instagram video. And he does that to Momoa in one of them, and Momoa's laying down on a car. And then
I've seen this video. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Momoa goes to. I freeze framed it because Momoa goes to stand up because Momoa knows what he's doing, and he's also friends with Justin Lin. So you're like, you really question what's going on there. He goes to stand up, and there's a brief moment of terror on Vin Diesel's face as he realizes that Momoa is about to break his height cheating video, and he twists around to cheat the perspective, and then Momoa walks up from behind him and just dwarfs him, and then drops down and does the Vin Diesel to Vin Diesel. Oh man, it was so glorious too, because Momoa is like my favorite troll.
I'm watching right now as you were describing that one with Alan Ritchson, who I am a huge fan, and I'm so glad he's.
I've got to see that too, because Ritchson is also huge. He might be taller than Momoa even.
Yeah, they're doing. Oh, this perspective is incredible. It makes me so happy. But you know what's funny? You were talking about that because this had like Justin Lin obviously was the original director. You're supposed to do 10 and 10 Part 2, right? So he would like as you were talking about the Apple box, I'm like the guy who's gotten this mastered is obviously Tom Cruise. Yeah. Like TC has nailed this. And one of the things I remember sitting and watching Top Gun Maverick was so refreshing. I'm like, they're letting him be short.
Yeah.
Or I mean, Tom is letting Tom be short is the way I should have phrased that, because he was short in Top Gun, right?
Yeah.
There was no illusion that he was this perfect height every man,
Yeah.
but he was a short guy in Top Gun. So Maverick is the only character in like modern Tom Cruise cinema who is allowed to be shorter than
Yeah.
people.
Well, because it's especially in the Fast movies, and I think that a lot of this is related to the Rock feud, because the shot that I'm sure everybody thinks of if I say Vin Diesel and the Rock is when they're facing off and they're like on screen, face to face, arms up, and it's like like they're eye level, eye to eye when they like step toe to toe, and you're like, dude, I know in real life Vin Diesel is looking at his chin or his chest, like. And so, in order to imagine how humiliating it's got to be to take that shot, where like, how do you set that up? Where like, literally, I'm standing on an apple box in order to do this shot, and then like, what? You got to imagine The Rock makes a comment about it when he's like, "Now hop off your box and go back to your trailer." Like, of course, he doesn't want that dude in the franchise with.
Oh, I'm watching the Jason Momoa clip. The fear in his face. It's like, no, you can't do this to me. It's my movie.
Yeah.
It brings me such joy. So all I hope for, honestly, at the end of the day for this franchise is like a roundabout ending that just brings me joy. Because as ridiculous as these movies are, like they're just cartoons. And like, and I say this, it sounds disparaging, and to some degree I kind of mean it, like 80s cartoons. Like, we hold them at such high regard, but at the end of the day, like, they were just to sell toys.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what this franchise has turned into. Like, any real... I don't want to say that. Any serious control or subject matter's gone.
Yeah.
It's just one vanity project that he just continues to add more people in. So I hope it ends well.
If they can if they can all understand what it is, it could be amazing. But I feel like multiple people don't. Like 9 broke me. There's a lot of fun stuff in it, but I feel like there's too many people who don't understand the assignment. Jason Momoa knows the assignment, but not everybody else. And if they can if they can embrace the like, oh, this is, literally the Transformers or something like that tone from the 80s cartoons. If they can deliver on that for 10 and 11, it would be absolutely amazing. But I'm not really even negative on it so much as just like, oh, okay, this is just like they jumped the shark, and then they're like, okay, well, the solution to jumping the shark is jumping 3 more sharks. And
jump the shark in space.
Yeah, exactly.
Which they did, I guess, already.
So
in 9.
Yeah, so I'm curious, and I'll check it out, but I lost the heart that I felt like was there in 7 is kind of gone, and now it's just like, well, what kind of spectacle are they going to do?
Yes. All right, on to the next thing, which is Indiana Jones. We are talking Indiana Jones, which had a trailer. What did you think, very briefly, of the first trailer?
I like Indiana Jones, and I love Harrison Ford, and James Mangold is awesome. The trailers are good, but I couldn't feel anything about this movie.
That's fair. I was trying to balance my Indiana Jones fedora on my headphones. It didn't work. I'm not negative about it even. I'm just not. I'll go watch it. I'm sure it'll hit me then, like when I'm watching it. Like I don't see anything that I want to criticize even. It's kind of more Indiana Jones for me at least. Well, I think what's terrifying a lot of people is, and I think it's a fair criticism of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, was it went too big with the supernatural elements in terms of, I guess they're science fiction, but with the full-blown aliens and whatnot of the Crystal Skulls. And that we're seeing a lot of de-aging, which I think the effects look quite good. There's more, obviously, in this big TV spot. One big confirmation is that, and I hadn't seen this anywhere beforehand, but is that Mads Mikkelsen is playing a Nazi, and he may no longer be a Nazi, but Indy doesn't know that yet. I think looking at these trailers, this is my favorite film of all time, the first one. I absolutely love it. I know there's a lot of fans, my sister being one of them. Hi Haley, if you're listening, who loves Last Crusade, which was. There's a lot of similarities, obviously, between that and Raiders, and some of that could have been reactionary to Temple of the Doom. I wonder if that ever happened with another Lucasfilm franchise where people reacted negatively to a second installment. I like The Last Jedi. Anyways, I'm doing that for interaction. I think the joy feels in this. What I'm most curious about is how is this an ending? That's what I'm more curious about. And the reason I have faith in that is because of how James Mangold was able to handle that with Logan.
Yeah.
He's shown to be a very good filmmaker, Ford versus Ferrari. The Wolverine, I think, is a really well-made film up until Fox stepped in, and you can see where Fox steps in that film. 3:10 to Yuma and Walk the Line. Yes,
yeah.
Walk the Line. So the filmography speaks for itself, and the passion that Harrison Ford seems to be showing for this particular film
is rare from him.
in general, I would not throw stones at the guy. I think he was actually very good in the two sequel films he was in, particularly The Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm.
And you could be critical of his scene in Rise of Skywalker if you want, but the guy shows up.
No, it was
He's
great.
not Bruce.
Well, and I have no on-screen and it's not even a criticism. He's just notoriously is not passionate about promoting stuff, but he seems genuinely enthused to be Indiana Jones again.
Yeah, which is amazing. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I'm a huge fan of hers. So the fact that she wants to be in this film, or is clearly in the film,
mm-hmm.
I think speaks a lot for the quality of the writing of the property, and the fact that it's taken this long to actually arrive gives me more confidence, particularly with what happened with the other Lucasfilm franchise in the film department. So I'm very excited. You play that Raiders March and I'm on board, and the fact that he's fighting Nazis and Sala is even there shouting Indiana Jones. I know I was just critical of The Last Crusade for revisiting things, but the cast in general is incredible. With Toby Jones being in it, Antonio Banderas, as well as Mads Mikkelsen. And, he was in Logan, and he was in The Sandman.
Boyd Holbrook.
Yeah,
just saw him in Vengeance. If you haven't seen
I haven't,
BJ
no.
Novak's Vengeance, it's amazing on Amazon Prime. Check it out.
Okay, I will. There we go. And so I'm very optimistic about it. I think there is a lot more potential for this to be good than for it to be bad, given everything Disney and specifically Lucasfilm has gone through. I think it's going to be good. It wouldn't be finally coming to us if it was going to be bad.
Yeah. I think that my biggest thing, and this was the thing that I was really into for The Rise of Skywalker, was, and it was a lot of different situations, but to me, I was like, okay, this is the movie that needs to say, this is why this needs to be a 9-part story instead of a 6-part story.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of things I liked about the movie. There's a lot of things I didn't like about it, but my biggest frustration was it never said this is why this was all other than more Star Wars, which I think is a justifiable reason. It never got to that this is why it has to be 9 parts instead of 6 parts. And so my question watching when this is coming is okay, is it a grand send-off? Is it a passing the torch? Is it a whatever? But fundamentally, why another Indiana Jones movie? And I don't normally put movies in a position of having to prove themselves, and not even necessarily with this one, but the question in my mind is okay, if this is not a shameless cash grab, which I don't think it is because of Harrison Ford and James Mangold and other reasons, then why? What is it about this story that says, this is why there needs to be 5 Indiana Jones movies? And I believe that it's there because of the reasons mentioned above, but I don't watch the trailer and there's nothing in it that makes me go that is the reason that this is an essential movie. And so I'm hoping to find that out when I see it in the theaters. And I don't know why it isn't hitting with me more, but yeah, there's just something about it that's these are all things I would expect from Indiana Jones, These are all the aesthetics and the villains and and he looks great. He's always that. But I guess I'm as sold as I was when I saw the first poster, and nothing about the trailers has really changed that for me. And maybe that's what it is the level of confidence has always been there, and so there's nothing that like is exceeding or changing my expectations. I'm like, yeah, I'm still there. I'm not like chomping at the bit to like learn something about it or what, or nothing's blowing my mind, but it's very, I think maybe a good sign is I'm not watching it and going, oh no, what did they do? Like,
That's certainly, I mean, trying to think of Green Lantern is something where trailers thoroughly lied to us. Not to, I mean, I guess that works as a segue to the last trailer to talk about, which is The Flash. If you are curious on Steven's opinion on the upcoming DCU Chapter 1 slate, you can see that on, is it only Patreon? Or is, yeah, I believe so, right?
Yes, it's Patreon exclusive.
Patreon exclusive Snyder Minute with your co-host Andrew Dice. So I would check it out over there. So we're not going to get into that because Steven doesn't want to repeat himself, although sometimes I have him on before that. Although this was not the case.
Steven doesn't like to repeat himself is a great joke.
I don't know what you're talking about. So we're not going to get into that. I've given my opinion on what I'm excited about. Ironically, James Mangold probably is making Swamp Thing, which is something I'm very excited for. Anyways, okay. I'm the one thing that, because I haven't listened to it, I didn't listen to your episode on the DCU yet. And because I don't know if this would have come up yet with Dice, knowing that he is such a huge Flash fan. One of the things that I find disappointing, being a fan of The Flash, and I'm on a lower tier than Dice, for sure. Although, yeah, well, I've kept watching the Arrow show, so I don't know if that helps or if that hurts me. Depends on who you ask, I guess. But if you ask Greg Berlanti, Grant Gustin, Christopher Reeve levels, which is certainly a conversation I would like to have on another time, because I think it's kind of valid. Anyways, length of run as the character. But anyways, there's a lot of Batman. And I know why. We all know why. Batman's sexy. Batman sells. One of these Batman was Batman a long time ago, and everybody wants to get excited about the Batman who was Batman when they were a kid. And then there's Ben Affleck, because, like, the people who hate us, they like Ben Affleck. And I say that as a joke, but the freaking poster, Steven, also is in a bat cave. Like, it bothers me because the Flash is a super awesome, cool character that could work on its own, and there's a lot of Batman.
Yeah,
Batman.
I don't really mind that as much. I can appreciate it to an extent. So it's not that I don't understand where it's coming from, but I think I've been over the years gotten to the point where I've realized that it's easy to or at least there was an era, especially because what the MCU did, where we would say, like, this is what this movie is supposed to be. Like, a solo movie is supposed to be this, or an origin movie is supposed to be these things. And I, if it's being inspired by Flashpoint, there's a Batman is a big part of that story.
If it's, Steven, if it's being, that was another thing that was disappointing to me, was, quite frankly, this story's already been done in Justice League Flashpoint Paradox, and Jermaine, I can already hear you typing the tweet to me. Objectively, I think this looks really cool. I think there's a lot of elements to this that are exciting, and I will get into them. I just want to get my grumpiness out first, so then I can hopefully find the excited kid that wants to see this. But, like, okay, so just follow with me, and I think you will, Steven. I apologize for interrupting you, because I really try not to do that with my guests, because I want them to come back. But we get Ben Affleck in this, right? And it's like, hey, there he is. There's that Batman that everybody said was going to be so bad, and he was so good, and then we pushed him out of the way. It would have been so cool to have that be Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Like, that's part of the Flashpoint story that's so compelling. And I know there's going to be some sort of narrative way to pivot to an old Batman but like, my continuity brain, unfortunately, can't get shut off right now. And particularly that's because they just did a run of Batman 89 in comic book form, which is essentially his Batman Forever. But then Batman Forever, like, what's happening? And then we get Michael Keaton, and I know people are excited, but I laughed out loud when I saw him glide down, pick up a dude, and throw him on the floor. This guy could barely beat up Jack Nicholson 40 years ago. Like, and he's 71 years old?
Well, he's had some advancements to the suit.
Yeah, it looks like better rubber. I know it's supposed to be super awesome, and I love the Danny Elfman theme, and I would say that probably is because it was the theme of the animated series. Like, that's where I'm pulling it more from hearing it from, because it was in every episode, unless you watch the versions with the Batman New Superman Adventures, but that's not the point I'm here to discuss. And then, as I was saying with Flashpoint, it was like, okay, and then there's this Flashpoint. Like, the coolest change, which is not from Flashpoint, is the second Barry. Mm-hmm. Like, that's cool. But, and I want to turn this part of my brain off. There's no Billy Crudup. I know I have to let that go, but I don't want to. Yeah. And then the villain is Zod. So is this 2013? Like, 2013 on Earth 89? And again, like, brain, we saw Earth 89 in Crisis on Infinite Earths on the CW, because who also already did Flashpoint Paradox, just for the record, and that had a reverse Flash. And I'm sorry, to me, Zod in a Flash movie is not a compelling villain as opposed to Eobard Thawne or Professor Zoom. I don't like these parts that just seem like there's, you know what this feels like? And this is a great comparison, ironically, that works on the other way. X-Men could not get over the Dark Phoenix saga. They did it 3 times, technically, within the Fox 20-year run of those films. The Flash has other cool stories. Mm-hmm. And because there's one that pop culture has latched onto, because fundamentally we know that it's a great get out of jail free card for the upcoming DCU that we know is coming, and may or may not rewrite the certain cast members. I mean, we know ones it's going to, but at the same time, and I didn't bring this up, I'm going to bring it up now, the fact that we don't have Ben Affleck anymore makes even less sense for me, because we're getting Damian Wayne, which means we're automatically getting a Batman who is slightly older. So he needs to have been Batman for a certain amount of time in order to have relations with Talia, and then for Damian to grow into a 10-year-old. I'm hoping he's a child. It's so much more cooler if he's a 10-year-old assassin as opposed to Chris O'Donnell pretending to be 18 or whatever in Batman Forever. So, like, those parts I have a hard time with. So half this trailer, and I feel the same way I felt about watching Spider-Man No Way Home, which I desperately wanted to love those trailers and being like, there's something here, I guess. Like, Doc Ock's back, Green Goblin's back, all right. But, like, what makes this compelling should be The Flash. And because of reasons, they're not going to focus on The Flash. And it makes it even harder when there's 2 of them in the movie. So I think there could be some really, at least, right? Rumors. We're not going to get into rampant speculation, but it's just, I think there is a simpler version of this movie that could have still done Flashpoint and been really compelling, but part of what made this story so good was it was in an established universe that people had spent time with, and you felt loss from something, and there was going to be a percentage of people sitting in this being missing the Snyder stuff that we barely had. And there's some cool stunt double Ben Affleck stuff, which is cool to see his version of the Bat Bike. And I know people are excited that his cape and cowl look slightly blue, which is very cool to see those colors used in live action. But I would have been more excited if you sold it on the new stuff. So the new stuff for me would have been the Flashes to some degree and Kara Zor-El. And we get a bunch of that, but because she's Henry Cavill's stand-in because they didn't want to use Henry Cavill. All right, I'm done, Steven. Make me want to go see this movie.
I had a very similar perspective to
Oh, no!
before the trailer, but with the last trailer, like up until this point, I was very meh on a lot of it. The first one wasn't even a trailer; it was like a first look from fandom, and
it had Batman's silhouette. It seemed reserved.
yeah, and I don't know if I've done a 180 on it, but I am far more interested in this movie now than I was before this trailer came out.
Why?
I don't know. There's a bunch. Well, when was the last? How many times have you seen it?
5 times.
You have. Wow. I
watched it twice yesterday and 3 times in a row before we started talking.
You know
tonight.
what's crazy to me that hits me like the more that I watch it is for how much people are worried about Batman overshadowing it. Just how much in the trailer, at least, how much of Barry's story they put up front before Batman is even introduced. And even the way that he's introduced is as a, like, what does he say? I mean, obviously Affleck is teased, but like the Keaton Batman stuff is he's like needs some help. And so they've got the 2 Barrys introduced and the family introduced and all of that stuff before they finally get to that point. And it really, I think, makes it feel like it's not, I don't question whether or not it's Barry's movie, really. Like, and even when he enters, it's clearly as a supporting character. It's not like the trailer isn't full of his backstory and his motivations. He's there for Barry in the in what we see. And I think my biggest complaints about it is that it feels weirdly plasticky, and not just the CGI, like across the board. The overall,
I try not to. Yeah, that stuff it never looks finished.
Yeah, well, and I don't normally judge VFX, but the overall aesthetic feels a little bit more cartoony. And I'm not necessarily judging it for it so much as questioning whether I'm seeing the aesthetic or if I am seeing early VFX, because like the VFX themselves, like the movement, the motion looks good, the lighting, like they look realistic, but there is an almost cartoony palette, like even stuff like for example Supergirl's suit that isn't CGI, or Keaton's suit that, as far as I know, isn't CGI. It is in some scenes, I'm sure. There are shots where it looks I don't even want to say digital, but it looks plasticky, almost like it's supposed to have this cartoony texture to it, and it doesn't take me out of it so much as I'm very curious how accurately this represents what the movie is going to be. However, I think that there's a ton of stuff in it that is really, really exciting. I think the dual Barry, his performance seems great, and especially with the 2 Barry stuff, all of their back and forth. Ironically, given the drama surrounding that, which is, we don't have to get into it. I'd rather not, but it's it is for just I recommend people look up my article on ScreenRant.com about the timeline of events. It's Ezra Miller has done some questionable stuff, but there's a lot more manufactured controversy around the whole thing than I think people realize. And when you get down to brass tacks, Ezra Miller has committed a couple misdemeanors, which is not, don't do that, but also like maybe not what all the headlines suggest. So I'm
And don't
not.
post off social media things. Maybe not a good idea either.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe put that in your drafts.
yeah, exactly. Um, and so I don't really have that. I don't have a bad reaction to how much of it that they're in, but I loved the idea of having two characters, um, at least played by the same actor is, and specifically with it being Ezra, is really kind of crazy because you can already see just how much banter they have when you really don't get that, like, um it's a hard thing to pull off to make that feel natural. I mean, you go back to like the Parent Trap or something like that, where you've got this weird split screen and they're not really going back and
Back to the
forth.
Future 2, which
Yeah,
I talked about already, was like I think groundbreaking for the single passes. Like
yeah, yeah,
my
yeah.
brain used to know what that was called.
Um,
But yeah.
and I think that the Supergirl stuff all looks really cool, especially the aesthetic. And I think part of what's nice about this too is, while I was talking about the plasticky feel, and it's very light in a lot of and colorful and like highly saturated in a lot of ways, it's one of the few post Snyder DC trailers that I've watched that doesn't feel like it's trying to sell me on something. And by that I mean it's not trying to say like, oh look, we're no longer dark and gloomy, or we're no longer this or that. Like it feels very um it is selling. I believe that it is selling the movie that is actually going to be. Um
Hmm.
and there's a lot of cool, I don't know, there's it's got a vibe. There's a vibe to it that is not like I watched something like Indiana Jones or or Fast X or whatever. I know you love the indie one, but when I watch those, I'm like, I'm not sure what they're telling me to be excited for, other than here's more of these things that you like. Whereas this, I watch it and it's like it offers up um the the kind of character vignettes or the moments, the highlights are like, here's some cool stuff. Zod looks cool. Supergirl looks cool. The two Flashes look cool. Keaton Batman looks cool. Yeah, there's all sorts of peripheral stuff, nitpicks and behind the scenes drama, and Ray Fisher's not in it, and it's like there's hours and hours and hours of conversation that we can have about what's outside the trailer. That's like, this movie's complicated. But in terms of like what's on the screen, the two Flashes having their boots meet and having that like Dragon Ball,
That was
like
very cool.
like the
And
with
different lightning colors
yeah,
actually fits in with Barry's narrative.
and like with Zod's ship up in the middle, it's like a Dragon Ball Z level like power display. I mean, there's there's a lot of cool stuff, and it feels like a very emotional story. It wasn't a trailer filled with quips or it didn't feel.
Hmm.
It feels very different from MCU. It feels like a DC movie. I don't know. There's it vibed with me, and I don't know if I can describe it necessarily by saying anything beyond that. But I was very like, not really sure I'm into this, and now I see this, I'm like, oh no, Andy Muschietti is like, I feel like he's got something to show me, and this is not just a paint by numbers thing. And
I
it's not
think
nearly
there's.
as cynical as I was a lot more cynical about the whole resetting the universe bit before,
Mhm.
and how contrived that felt. But that was another thing where in this trailer it feels very, um, it doesn't. It's for the first time I don't think they chose Flashpoint solely for the reset purposes. I do believe that there's a story in there that they are actually trying to tell with Flashpoint, and the universe reset is a convenience, not the sole objective of the movie. So it feels a lot less heartless than I previously thought.
One thing that I would be more disappointed by, in given the fact that one of the key parts I was excited about was Sasha as Supergirl,
Uh-huh.
is that we have a Supergirl film announced,
Hmm.
and to get invested in this brand new version of the character, and then for there be potential it's somebody else in like 3 to 4 years, I think would be disappointing. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that that is not the case.
Or even if it is, it's a multiverse, right? If she's popular, why can't they have two
Yeah.
Supergirls? Um,
That's a great question.
and I think that they're, and it's, especially with Supergirl, of all characters. or no, not of all characters, but of a lot of characters, there's a good justification to bring in a second Supergirl, a multiversal
Hmm.
Supergirl in the same universe as a different version of the character. So
One could wind up becoming Power Girl or
yeah.
something,
Oh,
like different
man,
versions of the
the
same
people that are
character.
mad about Sasha playing Supergirl would be especially mad if she becomes Power Girl.
Don't Google that, children, please. Um, no, you're right. I think what I'm most excited about for that is, as you were talking, honestly, given the fact that I think Andy Muschietti is a very good director, I actually quite enjoyed it. Chapter 2. I think if you had put a gun to my head, I think Chapter 1 is better. But I thought it worked really well as a 2-part story, and it would be really cool if, for example, and I don't know if this is going to happen, but now my brain is stuck in Back to the Future 2 scenarios. What if we get Feora fighting Supergirl?
Oh, there's no way we don't get that.
Okay, but I hope so.
I mean, think about that. Think about the action that you're seeing here with her and Zod, and then like the way Feora moved. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody knows about it in Man of Steel. It's like one of the things people go to. I have a hard because she's back. You don't
Hmm.
bring her back and have Supergirl in this and not have the two of them face off in some way.
It'd be really cool.
I could be wrong, but I kind of that was always a sort of a given assumption
Hmm.
in my expectations. Um, I
I remember it early on being one of the selling points for people prior to BVS and Justice League, which was, look at how Zach handled super speed.
yeah.
And then what could that, and it, one of the things that is most important is how that's handled. And I think that what we do see and the use of the powers are really cool. There are a couple of shots where it's very difficult to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Like there's a real money shot of him running up a building that there's too much. But it's funny because there are a lot of people who have worked on Flash stuff that I would have loved to have maybe been involved in this in storyboarding to some degree. Like JT Olivia would have been a really good one.
Hmm.
But I think you're right. I know I'm being cynical about it. I think objectively there's a lot to like about what they're showing.
Yeah.
There definitely is more Barry than anything else.
Well, that was the thing.
I think
the biggest thing with me was rewatching it right before the podcast. It hit me for the first time just how much Barry story there is and how careful they are about what. And I guess it's Keaton asking the question, but he says, "Why save this universe?" Is it because this is the one
where my
mom's alive, and
Yeah.
which is just it's that's the story of Flashpoint, so it's not this huge dynamic thing, but it if the movie gives that same level of like, let's establish
Care.
his story first and then bring in Batman, then it'll be great. Obviously, if Batman just is overriding the whole thing, then it takes away. But the trailer at least gives me the feeling of like, oh, I feel like we're gonna have a lot of to some people's chagrin, a lot of double Ezra screen time of them interacting.
Sure. I think what's most important to me in establishing that, if that is the case, and I think you're right, there certainly is a lot of setup. And I mentioned this when we started talking about it. It's a lot of retread of that stuff. But if the film, at least from my own standpoint, if we can establish exactly what our Barry feels is missing before he runs to the next timeline, parallel Earth, both, into like what's missing, why is this character ultimately make this decision? We see a bit of it in that conversation he has with Ben Affleck Bruce, and there's an action sequence that, if I had to guess, is in the opening act of the film, or at least the first act or the first third, where something big happens, because it's hard to figure out exactly when exactly this movie's going to have everything, but it would only really make sense for Ben Affleck's action sequence to be in the beginning of the movie before Barry makes this run. And so I'm hoping that getting that all established makes us sympathize with Barry. So that way, like you said, we're following with him, and then that's the emotional center. And if that's done well, then everything else is gravy.
Right.
because that's what's mattered most to the Flash's character.
Yeah.
Right? He's the Justice League's heart.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, and especially following up after that movie too, it feels like the flying foxes in it, and it feels like and that's the one he time travels in that one too. So I'm very curious how
You
they
heard
connect.
it here first. This is in canon with Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Well, I don't know what it is, but I do know that they're hiding a little bit of something in there, but an explanation about why. How does he realize he can do that? Why does he think that that's a solution? Why now? Why not? Why didn't he figure that out earlier? What's the impetus to kick that all off?
I wonder if because they're doing the whole switch or reset, if this actually will, like, I'm saying it not as a joke because I actually think it might be possible that I don't understand with all of the changes this movie has had to endure, like with not having Superman, not having like all the baggage we've talked about already. Why not technically have this canon with Zack's version of the film? Like who does all those people are gone,
Yeah.
right? Like they may get bonuses potentially because of contracts for the film because of how long it's been in gestation. But I mean, I like to think of myself as more level-headed. It would appease me if this is like if they're straight up establishing like you time traveled already. Like it doesn't have to be very much, but if that's said, oh great. So this is connected to Zack's version of the film.
Yeah. Well, they got blue lightning, right? One of them's got blue lightning. One of them, so, or even if it's not connected to it, just the notion of a multiverse allows for they all exist in a different. But I don't know. I've never really been one that to pit whether or not I like it or don't on that aspect, just because like even if it does treat it as canon, it's not like Zack's is still kind of Elseworlds to me. I like that continuity and I would like for it to be able to fit into it, but like as long as they're not like, look at this version of Steppenwolf that we fought, and remember when Joss Whedon directed that, and like the show, like if that's what it is, I just.
Well, obviously that's worse, Steven, if they're like, look at the way worse Steppenwolf.
Yeah.
Well, no, the reason I said that in particular is because, and I don't know if I brought this up to you or not, but for the ending of the final film of the DC animated movie universe, they did Justice League Dark, Apocalypse War.
Yeah.
Which heavily involved Flash. Like it was a result of a Flashpoint, which resulted in Darkseid discovering their universe.
Mm-hmm.
And they ended it with a new Flashpoint.
Right.
And one of the things said in the director/writer's commentary track is there were elements of this initial script of the final film that they weren't allowed to use at the time because of, now they don't say it specifically, but you know who they're talking, because of another filmmaker's plan.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm never one who enjoys just cancellations or not infinite doesn't make sense either, but like just cancel. It's just something ends abruptly. So to have some form of ending, I guess, like it doesn't make me like the movie more or less, but having that fit, at least in my canon brain, I would enjoy that. Like, okay, we got to see part of a Flash adventure that may or may not have connected to Zack's version of the story, but because you would probably know this better than most. Like, was Flashpoint always going to be a part of the Flash movie way back with the Rick Famuyiwa days?
It seems like that was related, yeah. Because it was a Flash and Cyborg working together. Because that's how, like, remember, Cyborg is the one that figures out the time travel for the Nightmare, and so I think that Flash...
When he's heavily involved in the comic, right? He's the Superman because there isn't one.
Yeah.
Ironically voiced by Michael B. Jordan.
Nice.
In the Flashpoint Paradox film, who's in a poster. Nobody's. Never mind. That's just for Steven. If on the Discord call,
he's got an awesome Creed poster behind him.
I do. Thank you, and with matching lights.
Yeah.
I already have the Indiana Jones poster. I have the next like 6 months of posters ready to go, and I'm just going to be in an infinite rotation
Oh,
for
brilliant.
the rest of this till June. I think till the end of June. Yeah, Indiana Jones is June 30th. I almost said 60th. June 30th. So I have
That
that,
doesn't
and then
exist.
no, it doesn't. Maybe on another Earth where they months
Yeah.
are 60 days and they only have 6 of them. I don't know. I think over time I'm gonna get more excited for this film because we are getting a Flash film that is exciting. In the next couple years or so, we're finally gonna get some more Superman. Like we're going to get some Green Lantern. We're finally gonna start to get these members of the Justice League in some form or another, which
Yeah.
is at the most they're announced, and I said that in my chapter 1
That's a big step.
reaction. It is it. You know what though? It's only happened twice.
Yeah.
Like this is in the Dark Universe where they've done it 3 or 4 times. Or hell, you know what they haven't done yet? They haven't done a Comic-Con cast photo
Yeah.
with the Fantastic Four and the X-Men and Channing Tatum. So that's but I mean the possibilities for how this movie ends, it comes out in like 4 months? Oh, just over 4 months. Some castings could happen by then where we get to see our new Superman. I mean, if you're having a movie come out in mid 2025, it's got to shoot relatively soon if you want to give those visual effects people the time to make a film properly, which I'm hoping becomes the case with these blockbusters after everybody heard how Marvel treats their visual effects artists.
Gunn and Safran made the commitment that cameras won't roll until the script is done, which ideally that they move the release date also if they don't. But I appreciate if that is a truthful commitment. I think that's a really good sign.
Absolutely. It's something that, and I think a lot of people wouldn't realize, and I don't say that to sound like I know more. Well, it depends on what we're talking about. But anyways, that a significant amount of Marvel films didn't shoot with completed scripts, and you can tell which ones those are.
Yeah.
For the most part, some of them worked out, some of them didn't.
Well,
some of them were Iron Man, some of them were Thor: Love and Thunder.
Gunn and Safran even explicitly say, like, they don't say MCU, but I mean, Gunn kind of makes it obvious where they're like, hey, most movies these days, most blockbusters shoot without a third act and then just figure it out. And, you know, you ever hear someone complain about a generic third act in a blockbuster before? Like, I wonder why that is.
I love a blue sky beam. What are you talking about? Ironically, Louis Leterrier read the script twice for Fast and Furious X or Fast X, and they said, hey, we need a third act. Can you come shoot in 2 days? So, see how that turns out. I think there's going to be some cars probably in the ending for that. So, yeah, it's hilarious to me that this film will come out a month after Flash Season 9 has finished, which is crazy. At least there's been a form of the character. I would love nothing more for than this to blow my socks off. If you weed through potential, what are they, test screenings, it sounds like this is really good. I don't think it does James Gunn any favors to James Cameron himself and say, if you love Terminator, you're gonna love Terminator Genesis. I don't think James Gunn would make that decision for a guy as active on social media as he is, much to his detriment. I think sometimes he wades too far in, even though the comments are sometimes funny. He praises the film.
I was gonna say, I do think it's interesting that he's praising this as much as he is, yet said nothing about Black Adam, is saying very little about Shazam,
and didn't tell us what role Jennifer Holland has in The Flash.
But I think if we're questioning, like, it would be ironic. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that Ezra Miller is the only OG Justice League character that persists into Gunn's universe, based on how enthusiastic he seems to be about this movie and the fact that he's a multiversal traveling person. We already know that Ezra Miller exists, right? We got 2 versions of Ezra Miller in 2 different universes, but we got 2 different Batmen. So does that mean he's a universal constant?
I can't I can't with this, Steve. I can't because I can't with the universal constants. Given what we're experiencing right now with the MCU, I can't do it. I appreciate you trying to explain it because how you laid it out. That is how it should work. All right, we've got a Keaton universe and we've got Ezra in the same thing. Therefore, we have Ezra and we have an Affleck. That's how it should work. But apparently, you can have 78 Benedict Cumberbatches, but we're going to get likely a different Doctor Strange, or no, a different Mr. Fantastic, which I'm hoping means we get a different Professor X, a different everything, because I love Patrick Stewart, but he's so old.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was great seeing him in the big yellow chair, but I would really love to see Giancarlo Esposito as Professor X.
It's Disney. Maybe you'll just get all they need is a bald guy in a wheelchair and a deep fake. If they can do it with Luke Skywalker, they can keep.
Why you got to do him dirty like that, Steven? Why you got to do that? Oh, it's true, but I don't like it. You know what's funny? Of all of the franchises, of all of them, we're in a tangent and then we'll wrap it up. I apologize. Is that to you and the listeners for this? Of all of the franchises that's had all of the missteps, I give Paramount, and it's crazy that I'm saying this, and I'm not the first to say it, they have had the cojones to recast their biggest character with the Star Trek people. We've had like 3 Kirks in a decade.
Yeah. Well,
like,
and
just cast Sebastian Stan as Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
Like, he's right there.
I wrote a few months ago, sometime last year during Top Gun Maverick's box office haul. Paramount really stepped it up the past couple of years. They were always kind of, you look at the top 10 box office every year, it was, Disney and Warner Brothers, basically. Sometimes Universal, sometimes whatever. But like 2021 and 2022, I think, Paramount had I don't think they ended up with a majority of, but ended up with quite a few of the biggest movies in theaters. I'm curious to see if that kind of persists the next few years.
Well, it's ironic because this actually kind of all ties together in a way that I was not planning, but Christopher McQuarrie ironically shoots with incomplete scripts, but somehow made Mission Impossible Fallout, in my opinion, the best of all of them, which also had a Superman in it, which also he wrote on parts of Top Gun, but Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 will be coming out this year. And I would be shocked if the momentum from Top Gun Maverick / Mission Impossible Fallout does not lead to that being one of the top 10 of the year easily. That's hitting $1 billion.
Did Fallout hit $1 billion?
It got real close.
So,
I think it was in the 900s.
I bet the next two both hit $1 billion. I think it hit that breaking point of for a franchise. It's kind of at that level of hype, I think.
Yeah, it got to 791.
Okay.
But that was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So with, I think the ball rolling for TC in doing these,
it's probably like 60% domestic too, isn't it? I bet.
I had the wiki breakdown, so I'm not sure what the actual how the split was. But given the fact that I feel like that probably was okay in China. I don't know exactly what if that it was allowed over there. Here we go. Worldwide domestic was 220 and international was 567.
Oh yeah, so it's about a third. That's surprising. So that's a similar split to like Avatar and stuff. So that was really good. I thought that was bigger domestic hits regardless anyway.
But Top Gun was a huge domestic.
We need to avoid start talking about box office data or I'll start pulling up charts and we'll go on for another hour.
I mean, I appreciate your. No, I'm not going to talk about Avatar 2. I'm not going to talk about Avatar 2. I can't do it. Maybe off the episode, but we've already been going for an hour and 15. But yes, I think out of all the trailers for DC projects, this certainly has the most potential. I think it's ironic because I'm looking forward to Shazam! Fury of the Gods, but I think I know what I'm getting with that. Given it being a sequel, I think allows for more of that assessment. I like the first one quite a bit, but it does not seem to be stretching in any different directions particularly.
I like David F. Sandberg a lot, and I think I like a lot of what he did with the first one. Both the first one and the trailer for this one, I feel like there's a lot of David F. Sandberg trying to fight through a generic
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so how much of his imprint is allowed to be on the final product, I think will determine kind of how is it going to be more of Zachary Levi making lightning jokes, or is it going to be more of Asher? Is that who plays Billy Batson?
Asher. I think it's
Or
Asher.
is it
Yeah.
going to be more of him knocking on his mom's door to ask her why she left him? Like it's almost two different
Yeah, it's
movies
true.
of like and so wherever this one lands, I think on that spectrum is going to be dependent on how much of a David F. Sandberg movie they let it be.
Well, and certainly a certain amount of spooky moments as well with the 7 deadly sins and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah.
Those were spooky. And you know what would have helped this film? Black Adam cameo. Anyways, but I think you've turned me around on that. If the Flash, I mean, it should be, if the Flash is the focus of the Flash, and ironically kind of connects to what we talked about with Fast X, all I really care about is if I'm emotionally invested in these characters, and specifically with the Flash, with spending 9 years with this character and knowing how important his loved ones are to him. Bare bones in Zack Snyder's Justice League, and that's not to meant be an insult. We see why Barry's doing what he's doing with the wrongful imprisonment of his father, and not particularly carrying that thread forward, but this will be the technically third time we've seen that character. Like, has the character move forward? What does this mean for Barry? Like, is he now a forensic?
I was like, we're audio. I gotta say, it's the fourth time if you include Suicide Squad cameo.
Oh, that's right. I'm so sorry. Yeah, you were totally right.
No Honor Among Thieves. Am I Too Soon? Lois is the Key. Justice League. I guess if you count both Justice Leagues as 2. So it might be the fifth, but fourth or fifth time we've seen him.
Oh, what's his line? What does he say?
Dostoevsky.
What is? Thank you. Yes. Yep. Exactly. Oh yeah. So fourth time. You know what? You talk about Elseworlds. I would be very happy if Gunn gave us the AR cut. There's no point not to do it now.
Yeah.
Like, you're giving us Elseworlds, just do it. Like, it's free. Just put it on streaming.
Mm-hmm.
I would appreciate that greatly, because I actually thoroughly enjoyed that cameo scene. And it's one thing talking about the Flash. Spoilers if you haven't watched the first episode of season 9. We get a new Captain Boomerang, which is kind of disappointing, because with that being one of the Flash's main rogues, it would have been nice for them to get the same guy back, but they didn't. They had a different guy, a different character being another Captain Boomerang. But so yes, this being the fourth time with the character, I'm hoping that we really get to see Ezra, who is a very good actor, dive into this character, and seeing the dual personalities really will allow them to have certainly a lot of play that we don't get with these comic book characters. It's the most Elseworld it's ever going to get, quite literally, with having two universes merging.
Which I guess that's another interesting aspect too, is just how much of that, like, compare it to like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. This, I think, hits a multiverse vibe way harder, and yet I know there's a lot of characters in it, but it doesn't feel like a cameo fest. It feels like a true multiverse story. Whereas Doctor Strange ended up not really being all that multiversal at the end of it. It was just...
So if we're doing a pendulum, it's everything everywhere all at once, and then we're doing Doctor Strange. We're hoping it swings more towards everything everywhere all at once. Yeah. Which was so good. It's on Prime now, I think. Ooh. For most people in... I don't know if it is in the United States. I know it is in Canada.
I'll have to check, because that's worth a rewatch.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I own it. I think I have a digital copy. I'll have to check it out.
Yes, but go watch Everything Everywhere All at Once. Support A24. But yeah, I'm excited for I think I'm going to be excited for it. It's certainly something that I can say unequivocally, regardless of my criticism, I think it's going to look incredible on the big screen. And I haven't talked about this yet. I freaking loved the shot of young Barry running out across old Barry with the sky transitioning behind him. That in itself, I went, oh. Like, this is thought through as opposed to generic shots all over the place, which I don't think this trailer was. with my knowledge of Flashpoint, I was a little disappointed with how much of this I recognized, which was not something I was hoping.
Yeah.
But I think you've turned me around, Steven. I would say I'm leaning more towards excited. Again, I love DC characters. I kept up with most of the Arrowverse through most of its run. I've been reading comics since I was a kid. I want these to be good. And I don't want infighting because that's no fun for anybody. I think at the end of the day, we just want good movies. And I'm most happy that the Batman Part 2 finally got announced because I would have been very mad if James Gunn took that from me. But that's on every podcast till the Batman comes out, Part 2. Or I guess the Penguin, because the Penguin probably will come out beforehand. But that's supposed to start shooting, I think, end of the month.
Yeah, soon.
So... It's very, very soon. So I'm excited for that. Steven, thank you very much for being on the show. You can catch all of Steven's writing on screenrant.com. Any podcasts are all under Snyder Minute. You can support Steven with your dollars on Patreon. You can get the exclusives like live streaming recording of the episodes, as well as some occasionally news stuff, such as your covering of DC Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. I have to say, I love that as a chapter title. I think it's fantastic and really does suit with what they've announced so far. And do you have anything else, Steven, worth announcing?
No, I don't think so. I appreciate you picking up Dice's outro for the... you're repeating him with our Patreon plug.
You know what? We're buddies, so I've give the shout out to where it's... I mean, you guys don't need my help. It certainly is not the case, but how long has it been? 3 years or 4? How long have you guys been doing it now?
Oh man. I don't think 4
2019.
yet.
2019. So whenever
3,
the first
so we
one
just
was.
passed 3. It was in January, I think, January 2019.
I'm scrolling back as fast as humanly possible. It was March 24th.
March. Okay.
There you go. So you'll be at 4 years relatively soon. Yeah, I'm up to date, except for your live recordings. I got small children, so Friday nights, I ain't staying up. It's not exciting for me. So as I said at the beginning of the show, if you missed it, a review of, I almost said Flash, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania will be up on the Monday night. I may or may not have a guest. It might just be me. Some things to also look forward to would be most major blockbusters. I think the week following Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, I can confirm I have finished it. I don't know if you've watched this, Steven, but Legend of Vox Machina Season 2. I finished that as we are recording. I quite enjoy that show. It's the cartoon based on the Critical Role Dungeons and Dragons stream. So I quite enjoyed Season 2. So I might do that as a gap filler to another film or TV show. I haven't really decided. Other than that, you can follow on the Twitter at Film Realist. Don't forget, Realist has 2 E's on Instagram, or me on Twitter at Kyle_Naranja. That's Noronha. I'll see you next time.